Well, God keep our land glorious and free. That's why we're here today, to thank the people who have done so over the years. Thank you, Colin, for arranging today's demonstration and all the work you do with our veterans in the many ways that you do. And earlier we were talking, and we talked about the whole demonstration, left out in the cold. He was telling me that veterans were left out in the cold in 2005 when the Liberals brought in the new Veterans Charter, and now they're tinkering with it and left out in the cold again, especially the people who are already under the new Veterans Charter and are going to be subject to a new set of rules. He was telling me he was in the military back in the 90s, and there he was going through the decade of darkness, and Mike Lalonde was telling me that as well. And here we are. Now they're veterans going through another decade of darkness. I see Annette Dagenet, she's up here from Pembroke. She's here because she's got a relative who's in the forces and deployed right now, and we're all worried about the people when they come back if they're injured and how they'll be taken care of. So thank you to everyone who's come out today. I have your back, and because of the communication we have, we're able to fight in Parliament to get what you have earned. And thank you on behalf of Canada. So have a great day, and thank you to everyone who's come out and to those waiting to come out, because it's a good demonstration. Just a great place to chat with all our veterans and thank them one-on-one. All the best. Good job, Colin.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to let him introduce himself. We got another speaker here.
Hi everybody, my name is Mike Lalonde, and I just wanted to thank all of you for coming out today and supporting veterans. I think it's very, very important cause to support, and so I wanted to thank Cheryl for those kind words, and thank you, Colin, for putting this event on. It takes a lot of courage to be able to stand up publicly like this and take a stand. I myself am a veteran. I served in the Army for 23 years. I was just recently medically discharged in the summertime. And thankfully for me, I only sustained minor injuries. There are veterans out there that are in far, far worse shape. And even despite the fact that I had it relatively easily, I can tell you that transitioning from military life and into civilian life can be very difficult after such a long period of time. And in my particular case, I felt isolated. I was alone. We had support networks set up, but they weren't quite able to hit the mark. And so I got fortunate. I ended up getting involved in politics and getting involved with the Conservative Party. And I really think that in order for us to bring better attention to veterans' issues, we have to have more veterans in Parliament. And that's one of the reasons why I've announced that I'm going to be seeking the federal Conservative nomination out in Ottawa, West Nepean, so that I can do my part on Parliament Hill and help other MPs bring this issue to justice. And it's important because, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, our veterans would have never, ever left Canadians behind. They would have never let Canadians down, ever. And it is absolutely incumbent upon Canadian society to return that favor. We need to be there for our veterans. We need to show them that we care, their sacrifices haven't been in vain, and that they have not been forgotten. And when you have a Prime Minister that's able to look a Canadian hero in the eye who's lost his leg and say, I'm sorry, but you're asking for more than we're willing to give, then people, we've got some problems here. And for Justin Trudeau, I would ask, how much is a leg worth? How much is all that personal sacrifice, all those years being away from your family, and everything people have had to lose? How much is that worth? Is it $10.5 million? So the time has come for everybody to come together in a nonpartisan way and declare in one long shout or one proud voice that we're not going to put up with this anymore. The mark of patriotism for a country can largely be determined by the level of support it pays to its veterans. And it's time for everybody to show Canada just how patriotic we are. So thank you very much for coming out today. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you again, Colin, for putting this on.
Those seats in the House of Commons are green, and they're green for a reason. And that's to remind people that we have a grassroots government, a government from the people. Okay? And we have a lot of friendly MPs that are bringing our voice to the House of Commons. So without further ado.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. And, I did just come from the House of Commons. I'm the critic for the NDP for Veterans Affairs. I'm following huge footsteps in Irene Matheson and Peter Stauffer, who care deeply about your issues and who many of you know. And when we talked about nonpartisan, I think it's something that we've seen, that for over the last 15 years or longer, we've deeply failed our veterans. It's clear that we have failed you. And I had Mark Fushko come to committee last week and talk about how he has to go back and prove every time he sees a doctor that he has no legs. And we thanked him for his service, and he said, I'm tired of being thanked. Well, I have to thank you. We do have to thank you. We have to acknowledge you. And I'm here with my good friend Romeo Saganash, who's our critic for Indigenous Affairs and cares a lot about you and Indigenous veterans. And I greatly appreciate my brother here standing with all of us together. Yeah. We have to thank you, but thank you isn't good enough. When there's 29,000 claims outstanding for people waiting for their disability benefits, and 48% of those claims are going beyond 16 weeks, and many of you know they go weeks, months, years. That's not okay. The Prime Minister promised to stop fighting you in court. That hasn't stopped. He promised to give you lifetime benefits, a lifetime pension in return, that it was going to be better than 2006. That hasn't happened. He broke his promise. He broke his promise to you. The very people that have sacrificed everything for all of us to enjoy the freedom that we have, to enjoy the economy that we have. And he says we can't afford to pay you enough. But he can afford to protect CEO stock option loopholes on Bay Street. He can afford to build a hockey rink that's temporary for $8 million. But he says he can't afford to honor the promise he made to you. That's not acceptable. And I appreciate you singing today, the strength of all of you. We're with you, and I will go back in the House of Commons again today and bring your voice. And I let everyone in Canada know today that you're out here, that they are standing with you, and they care. People care on Vancouver Island, where I'm from, where people are on the streets living. Homeless veterans are happening in our communities. That's shameful. It has to stop. We can't have a government boisterous talking about all the money they're spending when you can't access services. It means nothing to you if you can't access the funds. Nothing. So we need a government to honor their commitments, to make sure you get the support that you need. People in our communities care. They share and stand with you, and they expect the government to make you a priority. And governing is about priorities. So let's make sure that we carry your voice and stand with you and continue to make sure that you are a priority. The government has a sacred obligation to make sure you're looked after. And I'm embarrassed to be here. I'm embarrassed to be here. That we have to stand outside here. That, our friends Trevor and Dick have to camp outside to raise awareness about veterans. The Colin has to come here and take time out of his day, and all of you, to raise awareness about issues that Canadians are just learning about. And that our Prime Minister says that he can't afford to honor his promise. Let's make sure he honors his promise. Together we'll do that. Thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to let a friend of mine speak here. He's helped propagate a lot of this message out there. Some of you know him. His name is Michael. Man, you brought your fan club too. How much did you pay him? Okay, hang on.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming out today. You're a part of a movement that's rising now, and I think you should all feel damn proud of yourself for putting up with the weather and showing up. You know, that's right. We got people today, not only in Ottawa, but in Vancouver. People are around Victoria, Calgary, Edmonton, Fredericton, Charlottetown. This is amazing. That's the spirit of the nation rising. So I want to thank everyone for showing up and making a difference. But when you go home, or even if you're on your phone right now, email justin.trudeau@gc.ca, because we need force multipliers now, and they may see us out here, but if you send an email from wherever you are and say, I support the veterans outside, that number will be added to the tally. And if we have hundreds and thousands of force multipliers supporting Colin today, supporting Chance today, supporting the other guys that are doing magnificent work, we will prevail. All right, brother. Good job.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
Hi there, good afternoon. My name is Tracy Wilson, and I am the daughter of retired Master Warrant Officer Larry Wilson. Larry served for almost 3 decades in the Canadian Air Force, and then, you know, kind of did the same job for almost another decade as a civilian. Larry was exposed to some chemicals during his time working on the radar system, so he developed, as a result of that, he developed Parkinson's. He's got neurologist reports, he's got doctor's reports, he's filed for benefits for that disease because, as you know, it's very debilitating. And of course, they automatically denied it because Veterans Affairs is an insurance company. It's not there to protect veterans or to help you. So that they automatically denied his request, like they do with all requests. And he filed all the appeals that he was allowed to file. At appeals court, he went in, and this is a man with very advanced Parkinson's. He's got dementia, he's got Alzheimer's, all as a result of his duty to Canada. And he testified. So they get him up on the witness stand, and he testifies at his appeal. And they ask him how many hours a week he was exposed to a chemical. Now realize this happened in the 70s, and they're asking him 30 years later with severe Parkinson's and dementia. So he didn't know. And because of that, they denied his request for help. So now Larry finally just got into the Pearly Rideau Veterans Home after waiting for an extensive period of time. My mother has been his sole caregiver for the last 15 years. She as well is in her 70s, and it's a full-time job. So now he's in the Rideau Pearly Veterans Home, and he's got a full-time, set of people taking care of him. That's a job my mother did alone up until 3 weeks ago. So he's unable to walk at this point. So my mother put in a request to Veterans Affairs for a wheelchair. Guess what the answer was? No. My mother put in a request for a lift chair because Larry can't get himself from the seated position to a standing position. Guess what the answer was? No. 35 years ago, Canada asked my dad if he would serve his country. Guess what my dad said? Yes. Yes. And that's the difference between being a true Canadian and a patriot and being an insurance company. So I want you guys to think about this. We've got a couple different generations of veterans here in Canada. We've got, the old school vets like my dad, and then we've got the new generation of vets. And I'm going to task all of you new generation of vets, all the families, friends, and supporters of the new vets. I want you to think about those guys who can't speak for themselves. Because here's the thing, if you are not deployable, you are disposable. And they will leave you out to dry.
The fact that you're shining a light today on veterans issues, and specifically homelessness, is something that our party and John Broussard, who's here with me, my predecessor, who traveled across the country last summer and held roundtables all summer long right across Canada with veterans. These issues are kind of consolidated in a motion that he brought last night to the floor of the House of Commons, which was a private member's bill, nonpartisan really, something that's happened in the United Kingdom, where the social covenant that Canadians have with veterans be recognized in legislation And in John's terms, that was the military covenant. And it expressed three principles revolving around dignity, fairness, timeliness, and respect for veterans on all issues. Be the standard with which we start, the starting point of anything moving forward. It should be Canadians, as it was in the United Kingdom. All parties dropped their partisanship to vote for it. Didn't happen here. So we are in a fight today in the House of Commons, asking our Prime Minister to show respect to veterans, because he's shown great disrespect in two specific venues that we're highlighting today in our motion on the floor of the House of Commons. One being the promise he made not to take veterans back to court when he was campaigning in Brockville in 2015. And as you know, the Equitas plaintiffs have submitted their application to the Supreme Court to be heard as a class action lawsuit. The Supreme Court will make that decision. So we're back in court. They're also in court with our women service members who are taking this government to court over providing a safe and harassment-free workspace. These are two things specifically on that front. But the one on larger promise was the promise for lifelong pensions equivalent to what existed before the new Veterans Charter. And of course, they came out with something, a scheme, that doesn't meet that standard. So that's what we're doing. I want to just express to you the gratitude of my colleagues on my side of the House. We're fully aware that we're not perfect. We're not perfect in all things. But I can tell you this. The last minister, Aaron O'Toole, who's a veteran in our government, put that lawsuit in abeyance and was negotiating a settlement with the Equitas group, and he was doing everything in his power to make sure we brought respect back to where the level it should be. And I'm taking my cues from Aaron O'Toole, who I greatly respect, and Mr. John Broussard, who's over here with me, and he's going to be coming here next, for all the work that those two laid, the groundwork for us to be here with you today, to talk to you in the most sincere fashion from our hearts, that we're with you today as you stand here and you shine a light on homelessness, and we're with you on all of the issues. Really, when you sum it up, we're here to show you the great respect that you have earned, and we believe all Canadians should know and act accordingly with that special covenant that Canadians have with veterans. Thank you so much. Good. Is it okay, Colin, if I introduce John, or do you?
I just wanted to say thanks, Bill. Go ahead.
Oh, well, John Broussard is the member of Parliament from Barrie Innisfil, and John poured himself into this role that I have taken over when we first were elected, and John has been an amazing, tireless member of Parliament on all veterans issues. As I mentioned, took his whole summer last year, went across the country, just dealing with veterans at roundtables. I'm sure he can tell you more about that, John Broussard.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. And Phil's right, I did spend a good part of the summer traveling across the country, meeting with veterans across the country, meeting with advocates, meeting with their families. And there was one message that came through loud and clear in that whole time that I traveled across the country. What about us? What about the obligation to us and how we served our country? And I just did a speech in the House of Commons, and I said, you know, when you're sitting there as the third party, like Justin Trudeau and the Liberals were, it's easy to shoot for the stars hoping you can hit the moon. In other words, make as many promises as you can in hoping to get into government.
And the challenge is, in the promise that he made to veterans, and he stood there with veterans as a backdrop, in fact, members of his own caucus wearing their medals as a backdrop, he had no intention of keeping that promise. He lied to veterans. And I say that here, and I've said it everywhere that I've gone, that he's had no intention of keeping that promise to veterans. The other promise that he made, too, was to not allow veterans to fight their government in court, and we are certainly clear on the Equitas lawsuit how that's going as well. But I think the most egregious thing that Justin Trudeau did, and we saw it a couple of weeks in Edmonton, and it really is the basis for what we're doing today here on Parliament Hill in the House of Commons, is the disrespectful, the gross disrespect that he showed to Brock on that answer to that question, that we don't have, or that veterans are asking for more than we can give right now. You know what veterans are asking for? What you promised, Justin Trudeau. That's what veterans are asking for.
What we signed up with.
And to know that your government has your back, right? And you know, I sit in that House of Commons, and over the past couple of weeks, they've been using my words against me. They've actually taken little snippets out of context to use my words against me. And as I traveled the country and talked to veterans, you know what? I showed contrition. I showed humility. I admitted that there were mistakes made by the previous government. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, Aaron O'Toole was working to correct a lot of these problems. The problem is that Aaron ran out of runway because of the election and because of the promises that Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party made. So I have no problem saying that we made mistakes. But what I don't do, and what I'll never do, is lie to veterans. Because you've lived through a generation of that. And that needs to stop. And it's amazing to me how the Liberal Party is quick when it comes to, and I see the sign, turn that placard over, there it is, 40 million to terrorism, $256 million to China infrastructure, billions to terrorist nations. The list goes on. How about we prioritize and we look after our veterans and we look after our seniors as a matter of priority in this country? Let's stop sending billions to the UN so we can buy a seat. Let's look after those people who've looked after us, our seniors and our veterans. And so we're going to continue to fight. And I want to acknowledge as well, we've got MP Dane Lloyd here, MP Gord Brown, MP Guy Lazan. I see Joël Gaudin here. Are there any other MPs that are here from our party? And we see MP Mel Arnold just coming down the stairs. We're in there today for two simple reasons with this motion. Number one is to make Justin Trudeau apologize for what he said. First and foremost, he owes not just Brock, but every Canadian veteran an apology for what he said, because that wound is deep. It's very deep. And I've been hearing from veterans across the country and their families telling me how deep that is. And secondly, live up to your promises you made to veterans, Justin Trudeau. I will say this too, you guys picked a great day to be out here. It was minus 40 2 weeks ago, but anyways, we've got to head back. We've got question period, and I will tell you that the focus of our question period today will be on your issues, and we'll stand in there and we'll fight on your behalf. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. I also want to acknowledge Member of Parliament David Sweet, who's the former chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee, who's here. He's my seatmate and a very, very passionate advocate for veterans and their families. Thanks, David.
Hi, I'm Brock's aunt. Our nephew has asked us to come here today to speak on his behalf. His name is Brock Blazchuk. He is the retired corporal from the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry 1st Battalion. He was deployed to Afghanistan in 2009 and was wounded in action. He lost his left lower leg and has had tissue and nerve loss to his right leg. You will know him better as the veteran who questioned Prime Minister Trudeau last month in Edmonton. So these are Brock's words.
Fellow veterans and supporters, I am the veteran that asked the Prime Minister, why has he broken his promises? Why he continues to fight us in court? The answer we received was, well, we are asking for more than the government is able to give. Yet, millions are being spent on other things this government takes interest in. He says we are asking for too much. I ask, what was asked of us? Sorry. Our minds, our bodies, our limbs, and even our lives, we continue to deal with the effects of war. We suffer. We all sign that dotted line, waiting to serve our country, to sacrifice ourselves for this country. I believe all we are asking for is our government to legitimize the country's sacred obligation it has to our veterans. But the government fails to recognize and uphold this obligation, even though our Prime Minister himself has said they must. This became very evident to me when the government defeated the Private Members Bill C-378 to establish fairness principles. This shows, with no possible doubt, that we are being shoved to the wayside and left out in the cold. The government has dropped the torch. This government has broken faith with those who have served, sacrificed, and died in the name of our beloved land. But brothers and sisters, we are a relentless group of individuals, miracles in our own right of inner strength, and some of modern medicine. We may be in the darkness, but within each other we will find the light and crawl out of the trenches onto the battlefield. We will cover each other's backs and even carry one another, like on the killing fields of Afghanistan or other far-off lands. We will fight, not for ourselves, but for one another. I would like to quote a line from Joe Galloway, a reporter during the Vietnam War. You know, they say those guys from World War II were the best generation? Well, those who fought in every war since then were just the best of their generation. They went, they served, they sacrificed, they fought like tigers. They were noble. My name is Brock Blazchak, and I say we are prepared to be injured in the line of duty. We were prepared to be killed in action. What we were not prepared for was Canada turning their backs on us. How are we asking for too much when we have given so much? Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Colin, is there a bunch of people that want to, some of you want to come in a question period? You want to come in a question period right now? Go.
All right. I'm taking off. I'm going to question period.
Yeah.